Hello and welcome. I'm Jenny Hall. Thanks for joining me for another card making tutorial. Today I continue my series for beginners for watercoloring for card makers. By using a watercolored panel, you can use a scrap piece of paper, that's no problem. Grab a few dies, make some die cuts, and you have something all new and custom made for your project. I have a piece of watercolor paper here, and it's just a scrap, but a scrap is often enough to do the job. Using the dye ink from Stampin' Up's classic ink pads and my aqua painter, I'm dipping up a little bit of ink at a time and building up some layers to create a light watercolor wash. Once this is dry, then I'll use a die such as the Lots of Labels Thinlits die here, and this is going to be an interesting focal point for a handmade card. There are so many ways that we can use our Thinlits dies. Another way that I'm going to feature something on this card as a contrast is with a regular piece of Whisper White cardstock, white embossing one of the pieces of one of the stamps from Best Birds, and then die cutting it. I want to keep the watercolored die cuts to be the feature on the card project, to be able to use as an example and show exactly how we can use them. Here's another way that we can add a little bit of watercolor by just drawing out a little bit of water on a stamp before it's stamped on the stamp pad. Then it's going to give me a little bit of a messy look or a more natural looking flower, and the image in the overall stamped product is not going to be as precise. And I can die cut this because I have a die set for the little flower, and it's going to give me a natural looking flower. Now here's an example on how to die cut a little bit more of a concentrated dark color. This is Peekaboo Peach, and I'm really putting in a lot more of the ink from the stamp pad, squeezing the barrel of the aqua painter, and I just need to create an area large enough to die cut the little bird. Some of the little pieces are very tiny, and I can lay them back in right next to where they were die cut, glue them back onto the bird, and it'll give me just a little bit of texture. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're using watercolor die cuts. Don't be afraid to use those extra pieces that came out of the die in your project. I'm layering two pieces of Whisper White cardstock to act as my card front, and I'll adhere them to a card base with foam adhesive. Now I'm going to take that first light colored watercolor wash die cut, and I'll put it down, and that will be the background for the bird, the flowers, and the branch. Because it is a light color, then it's going to be part of the focal point, but it's not going to take over the entire project. If I were to have made this a very strong blue color, then that little bird that I made dark, even though it's a smaller object, it would be overtaken in the entire overall effect. Moving the flowers around into a visual triangle with some of the other objects is going to help make this project look pleasing by design. Those little bitty tiny pearls are just the perfect centers for the little flowers, and they'll add some texture for the fingers as well. The inside of the card has one of the birds from the same stamp set that is stamped in the same blue that I used on the front of the card, and I'm going to add some Wink of Stella to those little flowers. It's going to be just the right tiny amount of sparkle. I hope this video instruction is a little bit more of a help for anyone that is struggling with watercolor in their card making projects. I'd like to urge that there is no wrong or right way to make this watercolor wash. It is going to look natural. Where the control is going to come is from your die cut. So if you have a panel that has a light and a dark portion, then feel free to die cut something such as the bird or a flower that has a little bit of light and a little bit of dark. And that's going to give your project just the right amount of variety to please the eye. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any requests on techniques that you'd like to see added in with this watercolor series for beginners, please feel free to leave me a comment below here on YouTube. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching the video. Have a good day!